Hi, my name is Lindsay Meekum, and for this career profile assignment, I chose to research grief and bereavement counseling. I'm fairly positive that I would like to pursue a career in some sort of therapy or counseling, and for this assignment, I thought it would be interesting to narrow that down into one specific type of counseling. A couple of years ago, my daughter passed away, and I know all too well the importance of having someone with whom you can discuss your feelings and your grief and the blessing that is. So I thought this would be interesting to look more into for this assignment. First, let me give you a kind of an overview of what a grief counselor does. So grief counselors typically provide counsel and comfort with people who have suffered a loss. Typically, it's the death of a loved one. Not always, but that's typical. So grief counselors help people cope with the feelings that come along with grief. Their aim is to help people accept the loss, accept their losses, so that they can continue on and live happy and meaningful lives. Most counselors use something called an active listening approach, and this is a technique that the counselors listen a whole lot more than they talk, but that lets the client give voice to their feelings and their emotions, which is oftentimes what a client suffering with grief needs. They need to feel validated in their grief, and they need to talk about it so that they can process the very heavy emotions that they're dealing with. Additionally, grief counselors monitor their clients for additional signs of mental and emotional distress that might need further medical assistance or help. So basically, the goal or aim of a grief counselor is to help people cope with grief. Now let me just briefly talk about the educational requirements and salary expectations, I guess. Grief counselors need to have a bachelor's degree in counseling, social work, thanatology, or other related fields such as marriage and family development. They also need to have a master's degree in counseling. And depending on the state that you live in, some grief counselors, aspiring grief counselors, I should say, also need to have a PhD, and that depends. Unfortunately, the Bureau of Labor Statistics did not have any concrete information specifically for grief counselors. However, in 2015, the average salary for a mental health counselor was $43,000. So using that number, I would assume, and granted this is just an assumption, but I would assume that a grief counselor's starting salary would be somewhere below $43,000, and an experienced grief counselor would make somewhere above that. Now, the really interesting thing that I found about grief counseling was that the work environment options are myriad and plentiful. Grief counselors can work in a variety of settings, including hospitals, mental health clinics, funeral homes, senior centers, retirement homes, long-term care facilities, the military, and even in private practices. So you have a wide variety of places to work in, which is refreshing and exciting. Along with that, the benefits that you could expect in your job are varied. So because there's so many varied options for grief counselors, the benefits are also varied and would depend on the job that a grief counselor chose. As with any mental health profession, it can be hard for a counselor to balance the empathy and stress that they feel for their clients with their home and personal lives. However, as I was researching, I came across many personal accounts of therapists who all said basically that no matter the stress that they felt, the successes that they earn with clients far outweighs any of the stresses that they feel along the process, which is very positive. Another kind of ironic but positive thing for the field of grief counseling is that with kind of the advent of insurance plans paying for mental health care, including the government's health insurance, more Americans are now able to pursue grief counseling if they need it and have it paid for. And so this is promising for the field of grief counseling, as ironic as that sounds. And let's see. I think I've covered everything I need to. The only other thing is that while I was researching actually the stressors for the job, I came across a very interesting article, and I'll put a link to it in the comments right here. And it was an article that actually quotes several different therapists and counselors and what they do to deal with the stress of their jobs. And there's a wide variety of things. I saw yoga, painting, cooking healthy food, a wide variety, but I thought it was a very interesting article. So I will put it down here in the comments, a link to it, so that you can read it. Who knows, maybe some of these ideas are good for the stress that we incur while we're students. Anyways, I think that wraps it up for my assignment. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments and I will see if I can answer them. Thanks. Bye.